and now it's all coming.
Bruce of We Are Change. It's been a great weekend so far. Lots of interviews happening, and I'm here with Dennis Speed, and we're going to do a little interview about a couple different things. Dennis, what is your truth? What is something that jumps out at you that has really become your truth living your life?
I'd say that the main thing that I learned in several decades of just messing around out in the street, talking to people, been politically active for a long time, is that you don't really know anything. What you really do is you find out whether people are prepared to think about the idea that the reality that they think is out here is made for them. Now, if they're able to think that thought, then they can change whatever the reality is that they're confronted by. But if they can't think the thought that the reality that they think they have is all made, they're incapable of changing it.
And you're talking about some powerful, powerful things there with intention. And can you speak a little bit about intention and what a positive intention can do for us?
Intention is a really interesting idea, man. You know that the astronomer Kepler, back in the 17th century, when he was working on the whole idea of the orbits of the planets, he had this idea that there had to be an intention that the planets had. Now, he wasn't saying that the planets were alive, but he was saying that the motion of the planets represented something that was a living system. And so he began to look at these different ideas, and first he was looking at visual ideas coming out of Platonic philosophy and so on. Then he went to music. He had this notion of harmonies among the planets. And then he realized that actually both of the ideas he had, neither one of them was enough to really give him the concept. And he began to think this. He said, we think about the universe as being perfect because it's circular. He said, but suppose it's the case that the orbits, which he had been analyzing, and he came up with this idea, they're not exactly circular. They're just off a little bit. He said, so maybe it's elliptical. Maybe it's not the case that the way we think about the center of the universe is the way the center of the universe is. Now, when you ask the question about intention, intention is not the kind of idea that means that I'm the center of everything. That I come up with an idea what I want to do, and therefore that's me centering the universe. No, it's a different idea. How about this idea? You talk about making revolutions, American Revolution, other kinds of things that have happened in history. And people say, well, somebody made the revolution. Well, but maybe it's a different thing. Maybe what actually happened was that an intention was in the universe that a few people spoke to. And then when they were changing things, they weren't changing things frictionally. They were changing things because there was an opening in the universe for that change at that time. Now, they had to personify it and so forth and so on. So, people look at people like Martin Luther King and they say, well, Martin Luther King was a great leader and this and that and the other. But, if you really look at it, he wasn't really even political. This was a guy that was coming from a certain matrix, Christian matrix, but really, when he gave the famous speeches, people were hearing the speeches inside of their head. They weren't hearing his words coming from somebody. They were hearing what he was saying as though they were formulating it as he was saying it. So what happened was their sense of empowerment was coming from the inside of their head, but he was the transmission of that. So intention is a funny thing because intention can be very much a harmonic thing rather than a frictional thing. So when you ask me that question, my thing is, well, the idea of intention has to be that it's pre-existent in the universe and you're just trying to draw that out.
Powerful, powerful stuff. I'm going to focus on one, I don't know if I want to call it an intention, but one issue, something that can unify all people. What do you think that would be?
All right, well, let's take what people call economics, right? When people use a funny term, economics actually just, there's many ways of thinking about it, but let's say there's economics without money. How about the concept that there's a physical economy? That there's actually, in other words, we know about food and clothing and shelter and this kind of thing. Now, suppose you could organize all this and all money was for was it's just like a conveyor belt. There's no interest rates. There's none of that other funny stuff, right? And even when we start talking about debt, no, we just have credit. We just have a thing where, in other words, we decide, we need something. We need a road, we need a highway, or whatever we need, power systems. And instead of it being a thing where interests have to do that, you have the people decide that no, it's within the capacity of our nation or our group or whatever it is to change the society physically, right? So that, well, take like, for example, the old myth of Prometheus, right? He takes fire from the gods, right, and gives it to mankind. But there's no money involved in that. That's what I would say would be the unifying effect. Physical economy, where things are changing, but it's with this notion that the intention, right, is for everybody. See, and this to me is the way you can actually start to get a unity of people. I think you've got to get rid of a lot of the banking structures. I think we don't need them. I think that we have to get the American Federal Reserve. That thing should go down. I think that we have the basis from the old American Revolution to make a true revolution, but it's got to be this idea of a physical economy that unifies all of us.
Excellent. Now, I'm going to ask you, I'm kind of reaching here, but what can we, when people are going through a lot of this and they're uncovering this and it's the scarcity, what can we do to let go of that scarcity, to let go of that fear paradigm?
Well, suppose we had this idea that the human mind was limitless, by which I mean that the individual human mind is capable of basically limitless possibility. All right. Now, scarcity, therefore, would be an interesting concept. How about this idea? There are no such thing as natural resources. See, resources come out of the creativity of the human mind. Yes, there are physical factors that are out there, and there are limitations among those physical factors. But the way that you deal with those boundaries is you jump the boundaries. Now, that's when people talk about this idea of technology, that's what they're really talking about, is that you're exceeding boundaries. So now take like, I know like Sean Stone is always talking about thermonuclear fusion power. But what's the point of that? The concept is, what if you could take seawater and make that the fuel? So you're not dealing with oil or coal or all these other things. Okay, fine. Now, it may be technologically complex to do that, but now you've talked about now transcending the boundary conditions. So scarcity is not really a function of any absolute physical limit. Scarcity is a function of the paucity of human thought. It's the poverty of human thought, man.
I almost just want to end it on that because it's so good. But no, this has been a great interview. And how can people find out more about your work and what you've kind of uncovered throughout your journey, your truths, and different information about yourself? Anything?
Can't find me, man.
Can't find you. Well, then now this is powerful information, then, my friends, and we're happy to be here in LA. Any last comments while we're here?
No, I'll leave it at that. I think we did what we had to do.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.